Hello, Younger Old here, and welcome to my channel. Today's video is not really about motorbikes and such. It's about being a certain age and being as what is called a baby boomer. So, if you're a baby boomer, please stick around to the end of the video. Delve into a little bit of nostalgia and put in the comments below if you agree or disagree. Now, I fit into this category, and as an older, more mature person, shall we say, I tend to reflect a lot on my past. Mostly the good times, but always the bad times as well. I was born in the 50s, unrestored, all original parts, and mostly still working, although some are not as good as they used to be. So I arrived here in 1958 to aid mankind, and born to working class parents. Started to grow up in the 60s, yeah man, but too young to be involved in the swinging 60s. But then I do remember the Beatles. I was a teenager in the 1970s, enjoying T-Rex and most of the glam rock bands at the time. I remember getting into like Queen LPs mid-70s, and not forgetting the famous Dark Side of the Moon album by Pink Floyd. And I still listen to it now. Fantastic album. I grew my hair long and got into the prog rock scene. Uriah Heep, yes. Not forgetting Genesis. I saw them last year, and still, what an amazing show. Back then, you know, when I left school, I didn't know anybody who went to university. But if you were clever enough to go there, you managed to get a grant. No student loans to pay back. So okay, it's easy to get into uni now, meaning the country can't afford grants. And that is a topic of discussion all in itself. So leaving school without any O-levels to my name made no difference. There were more job vacancies than people looking for jobs. I remember at 17 I purchased a new Suzuki B120, £225 the lot, so £15 a month on the knock. I was around 20 in the late 70s, and then punk rock appeared. I enjoyed that as well. Your parents hated it, so it was obvious the kids were going to love it. Very clever marketing. So, enter the 80s. Now, older generations were not that keen on the 80s, you know, due to some of it being quite hard financially, due to economic conditions. But as a youngster, with no bills to pay, it was just great. Miami Vice suits, worn with plimsolls and t-shirts, mullet haircuts. Sometimes I'd wear a box jacket with narrow lapels and slightly padded shoulders, complemented by a nice slim leather tie. People used to wear a shirt collar scud to bring the collars together around the tie. I wasn't a poser or anything, even though my collar stood lit up bright red due to the concealed little battery. I was then thinking men wanted to be me and women wanted to be with me. My local pub was a good night out. It used to play loud music, and I remember the whole pub singing "Don't You Want Me Baby" by the Human League and "Wishing" by a Flock of Seagulls, as well as many other 80s classics. Was the 80s good? Hell yes. Party every Friday and Saturday. That needed to be trained for every other night of the week. Ask yourself why so many of these bands are still touring today. Get the shock of your life when you look at them on YouTube, and you know, you think to yourself, we're not the only ones who are looking older. And you can see how much these bands have aged as much as I have. Another decade passes, and we're now in the 90s. By now I've settled down, so although it was a good decade, I enjoyed it. Most of it I was spent being all grown up, doing all the DIY jobs that needed doing, which basically rendered us both being skinned for most of it. Although towards the end of the decade, things got a bit easier financially, and I took my bike test in 1999 and got my first big bike, a 1000cc Kawasaki ZX-10, the pre-runner to the ZZR 1100. The noughties were pretty normal in the beginning. There was no massive computer crash causing all sorts of disasters as predicted for January the 1st. So for most of the decade it was working and bike touring until 2007, when a recession hit and I sadly had to close my business. Then in 2008 my wife and I split it up, meaning I was on my own and skint yet again. The first part of the 2010s, life was a bit boring. I didn't have much money to go out touring, well, none really. Went to the odd rally as only needed a few quid, and I went as often as I could afford to go. Probably by the mid-10s, my dear old mum needed help with day-to-day things, so I moved in with her to be her carer and sold my house, which meaning things were then back to being a bit better off financially. Just before I lost my mum, one of her carers knew what happened to my first ever girlfriend. We dated for 2.5 years before we split up in 1978. But we met up again for a drink and got on well again, and pleased to say in 2014 we married. She wasn't into the motorbikes, which was fair enough, but now she is, and she tours me here and in Europe. I am going to plan a really nice tour to celebrate our 10th anniversary in 2024. Many things in life can kill you, but I decided two things which weren't going to get me were hard work and stress. So at 50 I decided to semi-retire, and I've only worked part-time since. Now when I look at the money I've lost, it's scary. And yeah, I'd have been better off financially if I'd have carried on working full-time. But I've had like 14 years of plenty of free time to do the things I want to do within reason. I've known so many people who have passed away before retirement or within the first year of retirement. And that's just not fair. I don't see the point in all that. When I had my business, I've experienced having plenty of spare cash, and I've experienced being skinned. And I'm grateful for both of them experiences. At least I can look at both sides of the coin. I mean, no, I couldn't afford to go out and buy an Aston Martin now, but then again, I don't really want one. None of us know how long we've got left on the earth. All we're going to look at averages. I could be dead next year, or I could have another 20 years. So, just to be on the safe side, I choose to enjoy life as much as I can today and sod tomorrow. So if you fancy that new bike and you got the funds, just go and get it and enjoy it. Because if you save the money, what the hell are you going to do with it later? The downside about being a boomer is that actually we've had more past than we've got future, which, brings me back to the same thing. Live while you can. Today's generation just seems to accept things as they are now, which is fine for them. But they don't know any difference. They've got nothing to compare it to like us. I'll just give everyone the same advice, whatever generation you are, is live every day like it's your last one. Because one day, it will be. So, if you've made it all the way through this video, hearing me waffling on, then thank you, I appreciate that. But let me know if you agree or disagree with me on the benefits of being a baby boomer. So thanks for watching. Do the ticks, it's always nice. And as always, take care, ride safe, and bye for now.